Whether you call it pro wrestling or sports entertainment, wrestling is the gift that keeps on giving. From fantastic stories to insane matches, good booking or matchmaking can give us thrilling entertainment and iconic moments. We all have dream matches and get excited seeing wrestlers work with each other that have never clashed before. And in this list, we will be looking at 8 matches we never got, keeping our list focused on matches that could have, should have, or almost did happen. So strap yourself in and let's take a ride on the what-if side of things that never happened. Number 8. Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Brock Lesnar. This match has almost happened a few times, but the timing was just never right. Back in 2002, the WWE planned to have Brock Lesnar take on Stone Cold Steve Austin as a qualifying match for the King of the Ring tournament on an episode of Raw. Legend has it that the plan was to have Brock beat Stone Cold in this match. With no build-up and no storyline for the match, the Rattlesnake said, "That doesn't work for me, brother," and ultimately walked out of the WWE over the situation. We did get to see Austin and Brock have a small brawl leading into WrestleMania 20 when Stone Cold was set to be the guest referee in the Brock Lesnar vs. Goldberg match that made Wrestle Savage's worst WrestleMania matches of all time list, but sadly, we never did get that full match between these two legends. Number 7. Terry Funk versus Macho Man Randy Savage. Yeah! Just missing each other in WCW, only being in the same place at the same time for around 3 months in 2000, Terry Funk versus Macho Man Randy Savage could have been a wild and crazy brawl for the ages. They also could have wrestled in the World Wrestling Federation in 1985, but sadly never did. Savage was moving up the card working with lower mid-card wrestlers, and Funk was working on another ionosphere with higher talent like Junkyard Dog and Hulk Hogan. Sadly, we can only wonder if these guys would have clashed had Terry Funk not left the WWF in 1986 and how that would have played out. Number 6. The Rock versus Shawn Michaels. What a great match this could have been. Legend has it that The Rock and Shawn Michaels almost got into a real fight backstage years before The Rock became a wrestler. It's said that Shawn Michaels had disrespected The Rock's grandmother during a Polynesian Pacific pro wrestling show in Hawaii. A young Rock would confront Shawn Michaels and this would almost lead to a fight. Years later, when The Rock made his debut for the WWF, Michaels held a lot of stroke politically and this led to problems for The Rock, so the two never worked against each other, stemming from the disrespect and almost brawl years earlier. Number 5. Mike Awesome versus Rob Van Dam. Back in Extreme Championship Wrestling, during the year 2000, they began to start a feud between the ECW World Television Champion Rob Van Dam and the ECW World Heavyweight Champion Mike Awesome. At the time, RVD was just a few months away from holding his television title for 2 years, with a 22-month reign under his belt, and Mike Awesome was destroying everyone in front of him since winning his World Heavyweight title at Anarchy Rules 99 4 months earlier. The feud was just starting to heat up when RVD confronted Mike Awesome in the ring, and later the pair got into a brawl backstage on TV in the weeks leading up to their match announcement, when suddenly, on January 29, 2000, whilst defending the ECW World Television title against Rhino, Rob Van Dam would suffer a fractured left ankle during a baseball slide maneuver. RVD would be stripped of the title, and shortly after, Mike Awesome jumped ship to World Championship Wrestling. The two were in the WWF together between 2001 and 2002, but sadly never crossed paths, leading us to wonder to this day what could have been. Number 4. Eddie Guerrero versus Bret the Hitman Hart. When you talk about the best wrestlers to ever do it, these two names will almost always rank in the top 8. How World Championship Wrestling didn't book these two amazing wrestlers to face each other during the 1997 to 2000 era while they were both in WCW is actually crazy to think about. Bret Hart versus Eddie Guerrero could have very well been a perfect match or feud. Bret, around this time, was only 40 years old and still in his prime, and Eddie was only 30, entering the prime of his wrestling career. However, in these times, Hart was feuding with the NWO and later NWO Wolfpack before he would unfortunately suffer a severe concussion facing Bill Goldberg and his career would be cut short. Eddie would largely spend his time in WCW in the Cruiserweight division, winning the WCW World Cruiserweight Championship multiple times. So sadly, these two greats just never crossed paths. Number 3. Walter versus Samoa Joe. Imagine the chops! What a match these two behemoths would have if they got to face each other. It's surprising we didn't see Walter versus Samoa Joe in NXT. Imagine Walter defending his NXT UK Championship against Joe, or Joe defending his NXT Championship against Walter in his 2021 reign. Unfortunately, the timing for these two to clash wouldn't seem to line up at all, as Joe never actually got to defend his third NXT title reign before being released. All hope is not lost though, and maybe, just maybe, if we cross our fingers, say our prayers, and take our vitamins, brother, Walter, now known as Gunther, and Samoa Joe will have a match in the future, but until then we'll just have to wait and ponder on what if. Number 2. Sting versus The Undertaker. Sting versus The Undertaker is a dream match for fans all over the world. The dead man himself has said this is just one of those things that people will talk about forever. Sting spent most of his career in the National Wrestling Alliance, staying on as it becomes World Championship Wrestling. When Undertaker worked there as Mean Mark, the pair actually crossed paths, once in a single match and once in a tag match, but only highlights from a singles match have ever been shown. Sting held out on joining the World Wrestling Federation for so long that by the time he showed up in World Wrestling Entertainment and word got out that he wanted the dream match with The Undertaker, it just didn't get to happen. At first, the WWE and Sting were unable to come to an agreement with the Undertaker match. Then, Sting unfortunately injured his neck wrestling Seth Rollins for Seth's WWE World Heavyweight Championship at Night of Champions in 2016. This would cut short Sting's in-ring WWE run and our dreams of that match with the Dead Man. Sting would leave the WWE and the Undertaker would retire before we ever got to see these two icons battle it out. Number 1. Bruiser Brody versus Hulk Hogan. Without a shadow of a doubt, this is the biggest dream match that never was. Japanese magazines and newspapers would run wild for years with stories and hopes of a Hulk Hogan versus Bruiser Brody match taking place. According to Bruiser Brody's wife, Brody was talking about signing to the World Wrestling Federation and working a feud with Hulk Hogan before he was murdered. Brody was 42 and looking to wind down his career, hoping for a large WWF payday. Hulk Hogan's match in February of 1988 had set a box office and TV ratings record. Hogan and Brody with the WWF knew that a feud between the Intelligent Monster and the Hulkster would have been a massive box office attraction, and wrestling fans across the world salivated at the thought of it. Brody had had fantastic matches with the likes of Andre the Giant and Ric Flair, and he was the only American star that ever came close to the level of popularity that Hogan had gotten in Japan. With both men setting massive box office records, selling out arenas all over the world, this could have been not just one of the greatest series of matches in the wrestling business, but also one of the biggest draws in the history of wrestling. It's still to this day one of the most talked about what-ifs in pro wrestling history, and we can only ever just speculate how amazing these series of matches could have been. What did you think of this list? Do you have a dream match that you just never got to see? Drop an elbow off the top rope into the comments, stomp on that like button and subscribe for more videos like this. And as always, thanks for watching and stay savage, wrestling fans. Ooh yeah, that list was madness. Yeah, dig it!